would have cried. I probably would have cried if I got all the way to the end of class and wasn't recording. Thank you. Okay, so back to the floppy disks. Yes. So talking about information. So yes, most of you guys here who are in this course, you know what a floppy disk is. And comparing chakra means disc, right? Disc or reel in Sanskrit. And Sanskrit, we know, right, is one of those languages that's very loosely translated to westernized words. But essentially it means disc or reel. And I think disc is absolutely perfect because she was talking about comparing it to the floppy disk or the computer disk. And those of us that know what disks were used for, right? We stored information on disks. Remember back in the day, we had disks and you had to put them in the computer and load it, right? You had to find like the hard drive and load the disk. And then it would give you whatever information was on the disk. So essentially, we can look at our chakras as each one is storing information about us, about our patterns, about our history, about our behaviors, about our strengths, about our tendencies, about our characteristics, about our emotions, about our physical health, and all of these things. And a lot of this information, as we know, right, has been passed down to us, right? We didn't necessarily get this information in this life. We inherited it as we were, growing in the womb. And full capacity. And it's interesting because what I'm going to read you guys from my new favorite book is she talks about that. So she talks about what happens when, especially the upper chakras, because when we think about the upper chakras, right, especially the third eye and the crown, they are essentially the brain, the intelligence of this whole system. So if we start looking at our whole chakra system as an operating system, right? And this operating system is basically dictating what we do, how we do it, how we act, how we feel about ourselves, what our physical health is doing, and all of these things. And all of this stuff is stored in there. So especially at the level of the third eye and the crown, when they are like maxed out due to some old ass bullshit, belief system or behavior, we don't then have room. It doesn't have the capacity. What does a computer do when it gets slow? Right? What does a computer do when it gets full? It starts to slow down and be really raise his hand, sounds like me. I was like, oh, Claire, do you have a question? So let me see something really quick. Can I move these around? I want to be able to. Yeah, bogged down with all the crap, right? So the computers get really slow. So it's the same thing so think about what happens, right? And we're going to be heavy on the third eye because the third eye is really it's like the command center, okay? When we're talking about this dynamic of the spiritual chakras, so 5 through 8, if the third eye is bogged down, well, either it might be shut down because it is essentially where we make sense of anything else, even stuff that's stored in our other chakras. So if we had trauma per se, right, at the young age, this trauma that created this trust or mistrust dynamic at the level of the root chakra, and we either react in one of two ways, right? When we don't have the emotional capacity to express and deal with our trauma and healthily express everything and work our way through it, we either repress it or we dissociate from it, right? So when we repress something, what ends up happening, we shove it down in there, and maybe it's at the level of the root, maybe it's at the level of the sacral, right? Whatever it is down there, there's that human stuff. In response, at the third eye, we shut down the third eye, right? And that's going to be you guys that are like wide open root chakra, Ashley and Trisha, wide open at the root, super comfortable in the root, and you're just going to stay there, and you don't ever really want to come up out of here. And then the other side of that is like the dissociation. So me, I'm like one of the people that dissociates, and I'll sit here, you know, for years of my life, I'd rattle off traumas and traumatic things that happened to me and just have no response to it. So I'd be like, oh yeah, I dealt with that, because look, I can sit here and talk about it, and like, you know, it ain't no thing. So me, I tended towards the opposite, where I had the excessive ajna, where it's overanalyze, you know, go, 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 go. And then, so when our third eye is overtaken with either one of those programmings at maximum capacity, what do you think your actual third eye skills are doing? Right? Your intuition isn't going to be there. Your clear perception is not going to be there. And, you know, so by default, yeah, Ash, you dissociate too, right? Tricia said, is the mistrust of myself also located in the root? Yes. So anything that's trust versus mistrust is going to be connected to that root chakra dynamic. And that's why, so not that I want to say any one chakra is more important to work with than the other, but root and third eye are going to be the two that, because if your root is unbalanced, we don't have the strong foundation, right? And now if the third eye, and in response to that, the third eye, so if someone jumps in and they start working with the third eye chakra first, it is going to help to kick the other chakras into gear and start getting them aligned. But if we don't dig into our root chakra stuff, everything is still going to fall over because we don't have that nice firm foundation, right? Does that make sense to you guys? Veronica said, sounds like my monkey mind, always overanalyzing simple things. Yeah, and that's what we do, right? Because we check out, but then we're going to overanalyze. Carol said, I've been guilty of that in the past too. Ashley said, how is that possible with a wide open root? Ash, what do you mean? Wait, how's what possible? The dissociation? Oh, because it's like, so, you know, because, so you're not repressing it. You're just, you're like, you're putting up a wall in it. And that's what happens in that wide open root space, is that you're so open at the root, and you're in there, and it's like, you have all of this, you know, around you to keep the stuff you don't want to deal with. The stuff you're dissociating from is like blocked out, and it's like over there, and it's like hidden, and you're like at the center of that wide open root, right? It's like digging yourself a big hole in the ground, right? And nothing can get to you. And all of that stuff that you're dissociating from is bouncing around. It's like circling around your big hole in the ground, right? And maybe you put a glass ceiling over your hole in the ground, but all of that stuff is still there. And all of that stuff is pummeling you at an unconscious and subconscious level. And it's dictating, you know, what you do and your behaviors and your stuff, but it's dictating those things at a very deep level. It's not at a conscious level. So does that make sense? Okay. Yeah. Trisha, does that make sense to you too? Good. Awesome. So it is. And it can get kind of crazy. It's a little bit of a rabbit hole because we start getting into like the psychology of it. And I mean, for me, that fascinates me. I'm that person that I just want to, you know, read people energetically and psychologically. And if I could go to school and get a psych degree, I probably would. And maybe I will one day, but I ain't got time for that right now. So it's just fascinating. So Claire said I overanalyze, but also often have a hard time talking about my traumas. So perhaps I'm a bit of both. Well, and then, yeah, so I think, yeah, there's probably like a little bit of, and the thing about repression is that when we repress stuff, we have totally just put it in a little box and shoved it away, and we don't even have the conscious connection to, oh, this happened. And that's kind of when stuff starts rearing its head as we start digging. But then again, the thing to remember is that we have the capacity to deal with things, but our mind would have us believe that we don't, right? Our mind would have us be like, oh, no, I'm afraid to look at that. I'm afraid of what might come up. I'm afraid of what I might see. But the mind has layers of programming that's only going to show us what what we can handle and what we're ready to face and what we're ready to heal from. It's just the ego that doesn't want us to do that because it's a direct threat to its hold on us, right? So when we talk about the upper chakras as a whole, the not wanting to feel it again, right? Because we tell ourselves, and Ashley, you posted something in the group about having the experience where it wasn't as bad as you thought it was going to be. And that's exactly what we do, Trisha, because we're like, oh God, if I have to go through that again, oh my God, it's going to kill me. I'm going to die, right? Because indirectly, unconsciously, what's happening in our mind is that facing and feeling those traumas again, our mind is back here screaming, you know, not consciously screaming that we're going to die, but unconsciously and subconsciously, we're perceiving our revisiting that trauma as a direct threat to our survival. I just can't face that again. I can't, and I won't. That's right. So you had this thing about, you know, meeting your higher self that was going to be so scary. And we do that with dealing with our traumas too. And I found that when I finally put it all out and looked at it all and looked at my whole life and everything I had been through, I was like, well, all of these things, you know, about myself that I was so scared to come to terms with, was like, that really wasn't as bad as I made it out to be. I mean, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pleasant. There was a lot of, you know, notebook throwing and pen throwing and stabbing my paper and like cursing, but it wasn't nearly what I had created in my mind that it was going to be. I didn't die. Exactly. Carol said, I buried so much crap for so long, it hit me like a brick when it came up. And it can hit you like a brick. Absolutely. And that's like, so me saying that like we can deal with it is not to say that it might not hit us like a fucking freight train. It might hit us like a freight train. But the key is remembering that we have the capacity to pick ourselves up from that. You know, we have the capacity to feel it, go through it, and heal ourselves from it. You know, and it's okay to not be okay for a little while if that's what it takes. It's okay to work through and walk through. And Claire, you know, this has been a prevalent topic for, you know, you the past couple of weeks. Like, it's okay to not be okay. Right. And yeah, I see that you said me too, Carol. So, right. So Veronica said, I find myself like that. I'm afraid to shed light on my unprocessed emotions, but all the same, I noticed I can communicate in a more direct way. And this is new to me. That's awesome, because communicating in a more direct way is the quickest way for us to express our needs and get our needs met clearly. And that sets us up for way less frustration. So that's that throat chakra in action. And you said, I mean, the communication is new to me, not the fear of shedding the light to the dark places. Yeah, and the communication is new for a lot of people. So that throat chakra magic. Sometimes when I have to revisit certain traumas, it feels like I'm beating a dead horse. Sorry for that expression, but unsure how to phrase it. So why do you feel like you're beating a dead horse? I guess my question for you would be on that. So I'm just going to wait for Trisha's response before I move on. Oh, well, yeah, that's all of us. It's like, oh, fucking this again? Really? Like, you're still in there? Yes, absolutely. Because, you know, that's the story of it. Because, you know, the funny thing is like, we look at our lives like, oh my God, I've had all of this, you know, drama and trauma and all of this bad thing. But the truth of it is that all of the crappy, painful events that have happened to us are usually linked to the same few initial traumatic experiences in our life. So they all come down to this, you know, these 1, 2, maybe 3 core issues that have then been just attracting various situations to us. And the thing is that, right, we constantly have to keep coming back to these things, smacking into a brick wall. That's how I describe it, right? I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall. And I'm like, I really, like, it's this again. It's this again. When will I learn? Trisha said, like, I can't examine it in any different ways. Yep. Again. Yes, Carol. Trisha. You know, and that's it. That's it's funny, but yeah. So because it's like an onion, right? And every layer of the onion has the same issue at the fucking root of the onion. And it's like, oh, here it looks like this is happening. And here's where the upper chakras come in. So when we're talking about this stuff, right, it does, tired of eating the same damn onion. Ash, how are your onions growing, by the way? Carol, I hate friggin' onions. So the way, okay, and this is important actually, because the third eye, the crown, and the soul star is essentially where the intellectual processing and understanding of these lessons integrates. Okay. And then, okay, what is the throat? Our bridge, right? The throat is how all of this information gets down into here and how this information gets up into here, right, everybody? So you froze them on accident and dropped to 25 and forgot them. Well, Ashley froze her onion, so she's like, everybody maybe do that, like physically, right? Let's all get an onion, go outside, bury it, freeze it, leave it in the snow, leave it in the earth, and be done with the onions. So what we can start to look at is by working with especially the third eye and all of the upper chakras as a whole, and the throat too, because in the throat, what happens? The throat allows us to speak our truth. Okay, so here's this understanding, right? And it's floating around here in our soul symbolic much. It's awesome. What about the dead horses? This is funny. Okay, so up here we have the information, right? Our higher self's up here in the soul star. A higher self knows what's going on all the time, right? Higher self is like, okay, lower self, Lindsay, like, here's this same issue and it's coming through. So this information then comes down, right? It integrates through the crown, comes into the third eye. The third eye is where we process it. The third eye is where we see, right? But then what still has to happen is that information from the third eye also needs to integrate through the throat, because through the throat is where we allow ourselves to speak it, right? And to create it in this reality. So the information is all well and good while it's bouncing around up here in the soul star. But until we can integrate it at the level of the throat chakra, bringing it into form in this reality, what good is it going to do us, right? Does this make sense to you guys? So Trisha said, so I want to access the higher information, but at the same time I don't, because I find myself not wanting more to process, if that makes sense. Well, that makes total sense, because we want the information, but at the same time we're doubting our ability to deal with it, to integrate it, to process it. And it's like, well, is it really so bad where I'm at right here? I mean, this isn't so bad. Like, I'm comfortable right here. So I could just stay right here. And I mean, that's okay. You know, if the choice ultimately is always ours, we can always stay right here. But then when you really ask yourself, do I want to stay right here? You and I both know that your mind is going to be like, well, no, I'm not going to stay right here. You want to stay comfortable today. And that's okay. You know what? If you want to stay comfortable today, that's okay. But then you need to stay comfortable today and not allow your perfectionism to kick in and start beating you up. And then being like, oh, Trisha, look, you didn't do any work today. You didn't meditate today. Oh my God. So that becomes, that's impossible. So that becomes the accepting point of the duality. And again, duality. So duality always comes up for us, especially as we talk about the third eye and the she wants to come in. The dog's trying to bombard. At the level of the crown and the level of the third eye is where we start to really accept that duality. So we realize that we can bounce back and forth in one day between, oh, okay, I'm going to choose to sit over here and be comfortable today. But then I'm not going to, there's my perfectionism, and realizing that you can be at both sides of the spectrum at the same time and being okay with that. And that's a blow to the intellectual mind. Yes, hello. My brother's puppy. So, okay, no, you're not going to start licking my face though. Boundaries. So understanding that all of that can exist and you can be over here and you can be over here. Yes, it is a blow to the intellectual mind because intellectually we're constantly taught that no, you have to be this or you have to be that, right? You can't be all of it. You can't be spiritual and human. You can't be love and hate. You can't be darkness and light. It's always this or that. And that's why we're seeing what we're seeing play out in the world right now, where people are so argumentative and combative because people don't understand that dualities can exist. So Ashley frees the fucking perfectionism. Yeah, for real. Claire, I've got a lot of work ahead. We all do. And it's the work of the life. So, Ashley said, I feel you. It's hard for me too, a daily practice, like cutting myself off mid-thought to redirect. And that's one of the most powerful things we can start to do for ourselves. And that's like a practical how-to application of third eye chakra work. So, you know, we've been talking more about practically applying how-to stuff. So creating a practice of checking your thoughts. And when your thoughts are shit, being like, you know what? No. Like, we're not going to do this right now. Because when's the last time you took command of your mind and been like, you know what? No. You're not in charge. And that's like your higher self voice talking. That's the voice you want to hone and strengthen, because we're all so used to our minds just running amok and running unchecked and dictating thoughts. And then every thought we have, we're like, oh yeah, okay, that's true. I'm just going to run away with that. Like, that's the truth. All right, well, you know what? We challenge things that we read on the internet, right? We don't believe everything we read on the internet. Right? We read something on Facebook and we're like, yeah, okay, I don't know how I feel about that. Maybe let me go do some research. So same thing with our thoughts, right? So that's how you can practically, over the course of a day, apply third eye work, is by when that thought comes, that's like, oh, you know, you're shit because you weren't perfect today, or you didn't meditate today, and oh my God, I'm going to now beat you up. Being like, okay, no, I'm not going to do this. And the first few times you do it, it's going to be like every 30 seconds that you have to put your foot down and be like, no, we're not going to go here. But the more you stick with it, the easier it becomes. It's those new neural pathways that you're forging, right? And Claire, that's why you've left Ho'oponopono. If I start being cruel to myself, it's an excellent tool for me to come back to the side of love. And that's exactly the point of Ho'oponopono. And we can also use it, you know, if you're like me and when you're feeling shitty, you start being really like grr towards other people. And that's how I know that I'm actually internally judging myself, or I'm being hard on myself, but it's coming at me. I'm integrating it at the level of my mind. Like, I'm looking at somebody and I'm like, I'll immediately come to the Ho'oponopono, because you know what? It's not even about them. And then I can internally do that. So it's powerful. Oh, me three, Trisha. That would mean I have to give up control. We don't want to give up control. And I got a newsflash. It always comes down to control and the ego. Always. Always. Every single time. So I'm going to share a little story with you guys. After my Bufo journey, a few days after, I was talking to the shaman who did the medicine, because I was trying to integrate some stuff. So we were talking about everything that was coming up for me. And he was telling me about some of the shaman in Mexico, the old men in the village, where he goes back to where he comes from, because he's a young guy. And he's talking to me about the medicine men in the village and how they do absolutely nothing. They just are, they just be, and whoever needs their help finds their way to them. And you know what? They have food and they have clothes and they have a place to live, and they accept that, and they don't have to do anything. And I was like, wow, you know, I was like, could I actually do that? And it's like, no, because then there's this part of me that says, no, but I want to be able to travel, and I want to be able to, you know, live comfortably, and I want to do what I want to do, because I'm still trying to control this human experience that I'm having. And so there was a punch in the gut moment for me, because I realized my egoic need for control was still there as well. And it just goes deeper at the constant need to be productive. Yeah. It's real. And that's, you know, something that originates up here. because it's like, so if we think about the upper chakras as the intelligence of our operating system, it's exactly there that we are. Okay, so if you think about it like this, something happens. We have a feeling that comes up. It's at the level of the third eye that we then say, okay, here's what's occurring. Let me go in and I'm going to access my entire database. And then if you imagine, it brings up Earth Star, root, sacral, solar plexus, heart, throat, third eye, crown, right? And it's got this whole database, and it just, okay, then it goes and it scans and it says, oh, okay, I'm going to pick this filter, and this is what I'm going to relate this situation that's occurring in front of me, and here's how we're going to act based on this programming. And maybe that programming comes from some trauma that's stored in the root. Maybe that reaction comes from some emotional block that's stored in the sacral. Maybe it grabs onto some shame or low self-esteem from the solar plexus, right? Does this make sense to you guys, or am I like out there right now? Okay. So it starts, you know, referencing all of our fears, our insecurities, our blocks, our failures, our needs, our wants, the times that our needs didn't get met, whatever those core issues are of, you know, whether it's self-worth, insecurity, perfectionism, need to be, you know, loved, abandonment, need to be heard, need to be seen. It just browses through all these things and it picks one, and then that's how we interact with the world. And of course, all of this is going on underneath the surface, right? It's not like we're consciously aware of our going back through all of our information centers and choosing. So when we talk about, like, to start to really understand ourselves as humans, right, we have to understand and examine this flow of energy through our whole system, right? The prana, the chi, the life force. I should have brought my water down. I'm getting really thirsty. Hold on one second. Oh, he's probably on the phone. That's right. I'll run and grab it in a minute. So, right, we know prana, chi, life force. We've been talking about this since, you know, day one that we started talking about chakras running through the meridians, right? It's not really something even science has come to understand yet. We understand that it's what makes the difference between, say, a human being and this coffee cup, right? Like, I have life force energy running through me. It animates me and allows me to move. It allows me to think. It allows me to feel. It's like, so Yogananda talks about it a lot. When you study Kriya Yoga, he talks about how, okay, I'll finish this thought. I don't want to forget my thought. He talks about how a body could be on like a life support machine per se, right? Like, it has the breathing, it's being forced to breathe, the heart is beating. But if the life force isn't there, the body isn't alive per se. Now, it's medically alive, it's scientifically alive, like it's breathing, it's beating hard, it's pumping blood, but the consciousness, if you will, isn't there. So that's very attached to our life force, our chi. So when we understand that this is ultimately sort of the governing force of our body, and we start to examine and observe the flow of this, that's where we can really, you know, interlay our understanding of the chakras, that we can start to understand our own patterns. Right. And I mentioned a couple patterns in your PDF where I said, you know, my pattern might be to ignore my body entirely and live in my head. Your pattern might be to push people away when they get too close, while simultaneously talking too much to keep them there engaged. Right. So if you're like okay, whatever our patterns are, maybe our patterns are to fall wide open, hardcore in love very quickly, and then we're wounded when the person we fell in love with is a narcissist. Yet we keep doing it over and over again. Okay. So here's those onions. Right? Here's the onion. So we're not making sense of our patterns because maybe our third eye is overloaded with some bullshit that we're still carrying around that's not allowing us to properly assess and integrate what we're meant to be learning. So essentially, there is like an energetic block. And then when we view it from the level of the crown and the soul star is where we're really like, oh yeah, because I mean, when you think about what's going on in the soul star, like that level of our consciousness of the soul star, like knows what's going on all the time. She's up there like, oh yeah, there's that thing that we signed up for, you know, back when we agreed to come into this incarnation on Earth. Let's see how she's going to handle it, right? And then here we are down here like, oh my fucking God, you know, trying to fucking work our way through whatever shit it is again, or whatever lesson it is again that we're exploring. Popcorn on our cloud. Sitting back, feet up, popcorn, kick back like watching a movie, right? Because here's the thing, the higher self isn't going to intervene. And until we make that connection and open ourselves up to the higher guidance, it's like a parent, if you will, right? It's like a good parent, in my opinion, lets the child learn by trying and making their own mistakes and then picking themselves up from their own mistakes. And I mean, I totally understand that that's a very hard thing to do, because when said child, you know, makes a choice that ends up in like a physical injury or an emotional injury, like that's hard to watch because we want to swoop in and we want to save. But like, what better way for us to learn and grow confident in our own capabilities to pick ourselves up than by doing that, right? So higher self's kind of like that, right? She's up there like, well, I'm not going to interfere because, you know, she's made this choice. So I'm not going to swoop in and tell her, why the hell did I agree to this? Right. You know, and that's kind of where people get really confused that are really caught up in like religion per se, right? Which is definitely a block at the level of Sahasrara, right? We learned that, being extremely like dogmatic or viewing religion as literal rather than symbolic, right? And these people are like, I'm praying to God, and I'm praying, and they expect like God's just gonna like show, like Jesus ain't coming back for you people, you know what I mean? Like that's not what they meant. Like Jesus isn't fucking gonna incarnate and swoop y'all off to heaven. Like that's not what they meant. And it's being able to understand that it's symbolism and it's figurative, and that the power actually lies within ourselves to drag that potential and that pick ourselves up, right? Instead of just sitting, oh, well, I'm praying and I'm not, don't get me wrong, like I'm a prayer, I pray. The power of prayer works, but not in the sense that like, oh my God, I'm praying to some deity, some being in the sky who's going to come and, you know, save us all. Like that's not, we have to save ourselves, right? Yeah, Trisha, it has taken me a while to learn the difference of doing for my kids and supporting my kids. And that's powerful, you know, and actually Tiffany and Trisha, maybe you guys can have a chat, you know, I don't have kids, you know, and I can only speculate what it's like. And you know, spending time with my niece these past couple of weeks, and she's 5 and she's the only child, in the house. So she's a little bit of a brat. But you know, I'm not gonna sit back and judge, because I don't even know. I can speculate what I'm gonna do if I have a baby, you know. I can speculate what type of parent I'm gonna be, but who the hell knows? I can have a baby and all of a sudden be like, nah, I'm gonna buy her everything in the world, and oh my God, you know. So I'm not gonna judge. But yes, so Tiffany and Trisha, you guys could probably definitely chat about the kids, because Tiffany, I know that you're sort of trying to find that space of not jumping in the pool with the kids and just holding space for the kids. All right, you guys, I'm gonna grab my water. I'll be right back. Okay. I agree, it's tough. Yes. We'll all be aunties. Right. We're also talkative. No, you guys are today, and I love it. I was just wondering what we can get up to while she's gone. Like when the teacher leaves class, everybody gets in trouble, right? I have to break the silence. I like when we have interactive classes. I like when I'm like, oh, we're going to talk about this, this, and this today, and then I end up over here. Those are my favorite. But there are no coincidences, and that's why I'm not really like a written lesson plan, like strict, like we're going to do this, this, and this. And that's why, you know, the PDFs go with the flow. Exactly, Carol. You know, the main information that you guys need, I always, you know, make sure that I put in the PDFs, and then anything else I'll incorporate in, you know, in the groups. If I come across something that I'm like, oh my God, they need to know this, you guys know that I'll share that with you guys over the course of the week in the group. So what I wanted to read you guys, let me do that first. So this is talking about the third eye. So she writes, as we enter the brow chakra, we look back at the steps behind us with new vision, adding indigo to our ever expanding bridge. Cause she talks about the chakras in this book as like the rainbow bridge. Once we see what the pattern is becoming, we can intuit the steps necessary to complete it. Our sight gives us guidance. We can see where we have been, where we are now, and predict where we are going. This consciousness lets us know what to do, which explains why the sense of sight is classically related to the third chakra, even though the sixth chakra is about seeing. Without vision, our actions are mere impulses, but with vision, they become creative acts of will in the service of transformation. And of course, when she's talking about vision, she's not talking about physical sight all the time. She's talking about a lot more. Right? We're talking about seeing beyond what we physically see. And she says, while our physical eyes are the organs of outer perception, the sixth chakra relates to the mystical third eye, the organ of inner perception. The third eye witnesses the internal screen where memory and fantasy, images and archetypes, intuition and imagination intertwine on an endless display. By watching the contents on this screen, we create meaning and bring it to consciousness. The purpose of the sixth chakra is to see the way and bring the light of consciousness to all that exists within and around us. So, you know, if we're kind of going by what she's talking about, our purpose is to bring, in the healing work, is to bring the light of consciousness to everything that we have been, you know, storing and burying, and all of this data and information that we have in our lower chakras. It's bringing the light of consciousness to that stuff that we'd rather be like, nope, don't really want to revisit that, don't want to look at that, don't want to admit that I do that, let's put that over there, no, I'm good, right? So it's pretty powerful. So Ash, what drives our minds to immediately need to relate to others by one-upping them? Like when you were talking about the old medicine man, my mind wandered to a story that's sort of related, but not really. Is that ego or the desire for human connection? Well, it comes from both, right? So it's funny because we want connection, right? We're social beings. We're creatures of connection. And because we're collectively so disconnected from ourselves, and then there's some of us individually that are working on connecting to ourselves, we're constantly seeking outward connection, right? And when we connect to ourselves internally, truly and infinitely, the need for the connection, it kind of falls to the wayside, because you realize that in connecting with yourself, the connection is already there. Does that make sense? So you stop needing proof of the connection because you just have this inherent feeling and understanding of the connection. Like I used to always sit in a room with people and feel alone because I was disconnected. So it didn't matter who I was around. I felt like I had no connection. Now I could sit in a room with people and get no attention at all and still feel absolutely connected. But so what ends up happening is that the ego grows in place of this, right? And the ego is the very thing that's going to be like, nope, we don't need to connect with anybody. And so the drive for the one-upping is ego. And then the desire for the outward sort of validation of connection comes from like insecurity. And the two kind of go hand in hand, because the more the insecurity is present, the bigger the ego can grow, right? Well, and the ego wants to cause separation. That's what the ego does. The ego wants to make me different than you, me better than you, me worse than you. The ego just at any cost does not want us to be equals. Right? Well, the unhealthy ego, a healthy, balanced ego, serves its purpose. But the unhealthy, out of control ego absolutely just wants to divide and conquer. Yeah, no, I love the questions. Like, that's what, ask away. And this is exactly one of those things that, like, it doesn't have to be ego or desire for human connection. It's funny that this keeps coming up. Like, it's both. So, and what are the upper chakras all about, right? The upper chakras, starting with the throat, right? All about expansion. Well, I mean, really starting with the heart, because at the anahata, air element, throat chakra is ether element, right? So this is where we're really expanding to concepts that are beyond, hey, look, there's a physical cup we can see. Oh my God, look, there's something I can hold. And we start getting more. And it's funny because you, Ash, you're so comfortable in the physical world. So it really is like you're stepping into this place of realizing it's expansion. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. Yeah, and there's definitely some heart, because the heart chakra, that's really where we want connection. So if we're still being guarded, right, and we're still sort of not open and not allowing ourselves to connect at the heart chakra level, or we don't have at least a couple of really good, healthy heart chakra connections in our life that we're honoring, because we're still a little bit guarded or shut down there, or a little bit excessive, so it's not yet a healthy connection, that too can feed, because when that connection is there, that's exactly what feeds that sort of knowing, okay, we're all connected, regardless of if you're acknowledging me or not, regardless of where we're interacting, I feel connected to you. So, so it becomes like the need to seek the connection out of, let me share this with you, right? Okay, good. All right, I'm glad. And yeah, and again, like, there's nothing. So part of this is also, this is where we factor in understanding ourselves as individuals, because now me being, a fixed earth sign with a water and a moon, a water moon and a water rising, I'm going to be vastly different to someone who's like a lot of fire and air. So understanding ourselves and kind of our own nature, like, and our love languages. And this is where, like, the love languages can be really powerful when you understand how you interpret love. Like, for me, it's like, you don't have to buy me presents. You don't have to tell me you love me. You just need to do what you say you're going to do. And then I know that you love me. But right, for somebody else, they might want physical contact and words. So by you knowing yourself how you fully feel connected, Ash, then you can work with that. So if that kind of interaction works for you, run with that. Just don't allow yourself to need it, if that makes sense. So if the interaction doesn't happen, or you speak up and the person doesn't respond the way you expected, don't allow that to shut you down, but instead keep practicing with that. And if that's how you guys, so explore your own needs and explore how you guys feel love is shown to you. The cardinal signs, I'm not, so I know that my Taurus is fixed. That's what I know. And I think, I forget which ones are cardinal. If somebody wants to look it up, have at it. I'm going to take Sunny's classes so I can learn all this, because I don't have that information off the top of my head. So I digressed again. So back to patterns. So, and this is going to come to learning our lessons. I tell my people I love them. It used to hurt me when they wouldn't reciprocate. It doesn't anymore. So you're like you want to hear it type of, that's how you express love, and that's probably how you receive love. So understanding that's, that makes sense then, for you wanting to speak up on something to forge connection, because you're like a verbal, you connect that way. And that's powerful to realize that. Good. So back to our patterns and our learning. So we see the way by learning to recognize patterns. And this is what I was talking about in the PDF with, observing the flow of prana, observing the flow of chi, and understanding how we operate and what our patterns are. Okay. We see the way by learning to recognize patterns. Patterns reveal the identity of a thing, what it is for, and how to relate to it. Too often we look at something only until we recognize the pattern, and then we stop. We see someone coming towards us from across the street. We look at the hair, the body, the walk, trying to distinguish the pattern until we see who it is. And then we say, oh, that's Kevin, at which point we often stop taking in new information. So think about that. How many times do you guys find yourself observing a pattern in yourself, or checking out something that you're doing, and then you immediately recognize it as, oh, this is that, and then completely stop taking on new information? There we go. So Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn are the cardinal signs. Yeah, my rising is Cancer. Yeah, we're all going to be in there. Yay. So opening the third eye allows us to continue to look. So this goes directly with us learning our lessons, right, you guys? So by really strengthening and opening the third eye, instead of just recognizing that's what we're doing and then shutting down to any new information, we can probe deeper into what we're doing, right? Deeper insight and intuition. So remember, insight and intuition doesn't just have to do with others and our circumstances and things that are happening outside of us. We can use our insight and intuition internally to check out what the fuck we're doing, right? And to understand ourselves on a deeper level. So pattern recognition is like playing a game of connect the dots. At first, we see only a jumble of dots and numbers on the page. But as we make connections between the dots, an image forms. Even before all the dots are connected, we can often guess the image because we recognize it. At a critical point in the assembling of information, the incomplete pattern reveals the whole. So while each of our chakras brings us information, it is the task of chakra 6 to assemble that information into meaningful patterns. This self-reflection leads to self-knowledge and wholeness. So the key word is meaningful patterns, right? Anything only has the meaning we give it. So if somebody walks by me and ignores me, and then I internalize that as, oh my God, they hate me, I must not be good enough, oh my God, I need her validation so that I can feel good today. Now I'm going to sit around all day and I'm going to worry that everybody doesn't like me. What did I do? Did I say something wrong? Right? And then I'm going to drive myself crazy trying to figure out why this person just walked by me. And I say this because that's how I used to be. Now that only happened because I gave that person who walked by me without saying hello meaning. So practical application, when we can stop that pattern in its tracks, so the person walks by and doesn't say anything, you know what? I don't have to give it meaning. But until we pull back and we say, I don't have to give this meaning, and until we can even put a name and a recognition on the patterns that have been running our lives, right? They're going to continue to run the show. Me too, Veronica. When someone doesn't respond to my good morning, I used to react saying, or not, good morning. Totally. I'd be like, or not, all passive aggressive, like Claire reminds me of over apologizing again. Exactly. So Trisha, you have 2 cardinal signs, and cardinals is that like crazy starting energy and then pittering out. If you need me, I'll be behind the bleachers smoking a joint. Venus is cardinal. Yeah. And so it's like high intensity at the start and then not a lot of follow through. And that's good because acknowledgement is where you can work with that. And, really focusing on things like root, the dynamic between root and solar plexus, to keep us going. So in the recognition of patterns, we find our way to insight. Insight is the ability to see within, the aha of recognizing a pattern, seeing where it relates to the larger picture and seeing what it means. It is within the self that the information from our experiences has been gathering and is stored in our memory. It is only by seeing within that we can cross-reference that information and recognize meaningful patterns. So that's, okay, so exactly like you guys talking about, the over apologizing. So you're recognizing meaningful patterns. And the thing is, and I like being able to incorporate the astrology imprint into our chakra work because it's a blueprint, when I read my whole chart, I'm like, Jesus, like this describes me to a T, so understanding that some of those like bumps and characteristics and crazy things we do are kind of sort of our blueprint. Like we're never going to be, and we don't have to strive to be this like flatlined, even like I'm just floating around on a lotus all the time and not having a reaction to anything. That's not what we're here to do. Right. So we're here to be idiosyncratic, quirky, weird, unique, different, chaotic, crazy. That's what we're here to be. The key is learning how to harness our full potential amongst all of those things. Right. And right, exactly. We signed up for this. So it makes sense that the stars were a blueprint and lined up as we entered, it's real. So it's crazy. And I even had a numerology thing done where he did my name and my birthday and did all of and it's like down to like years when stuff was happening. I was like, this is unreal. It literally is like, it's playing out quite. And when I looked at stuff from the past, I was like, well, that happened exactly as was in my numerology report. So it was pretty nuts. So there really is these blueprints for our lives. So what the fuck is the point of living in the past and being upset about some shit that happened when it was meant to happen? We needed it to happen. Like, yeah, it was ugly. Yeah, it was painful. Yeah, maybe we made shitty choices, but when we can just accept it. And that numerology report really showed me that because I was like, oh, so I was like, okay, maybe, it didn't specifically say like I was going to be a strung out junkie, but it was very specific. And I would have like these years of like extreme darkness and then come out of it at the age of 32. And so, okay, maybe my extreme darkness didn't have to manifest as heroin addiction. That's where the free will comes into play. So, I mean, the darkness was going to occur. The pain, the trauma, dark night of the soul had to happen. Now, what that looked like is kind of where my choices came into play, where my inabilities, where my chakra imbalances, where my experiences early on in life with my emotional and my shut down throat chakra and my shut down sacral chakra, the perfect breeding ground for addiction came into play. And, Trisha, I get it, right? There are certain things that have happened in my life that I have difficulty accepting that I purposely signed up for. And again, it might it might not have been the specific event. And that's what I'm saying, like with some of the things that happened to me in my addiction. It's like, why the fuck in my right mind would I have opted in for that? Because there's some like gritty, nasty, dirty, just traumatic stuff that I still have a little bit of a twitch when I revisit, because I haven't really fully, there's still elements of PTSD that like I can connect with some memories and I get a little bit twitchy and I really have to just breathe to remember that I'm not there anymore. And it's hard for and again, I think this is where you, who's very comfortable in your lower chakras and not so comfortable in your upper chakras, you're going to really be able to connect with this very thing as you work up here, especially as you connect with the soul star, because it's almost like beyond our intellectual reasoning. Because our intellectual reasoning is fueled by the ego, you know, and the ego in all of its judgment is going to be like, well, I know what's right and wrong. And I know, why would I choose this? And why does this person have to go through this? And why? Because we want to understand. It's 11:11. We can start to transcend that as we work with the soul star. So if you guys haven't done the soul star meditation, I think definitely do the soul star meditation before you do the meditation for this week. Yeah, right. Because it's always just wanting to separate us and wanting to put definitions. It needs to define, and it needs to understand, and it needs to label, and it needs to like file everything and like right and wrong. And what if it's all just beyond that? Right? What if it's all just beyond that? So this is the last thing I'm going to read out of the book, and then we're going to go over the interrelations of our chakras. So, illusion. In perceiving patterns, we often run into illusions, which are the demon of the sixth chakra. Illusion wrests our consciousness from open-minded perception, fixating it upon a frozen image. An illusion is a static image displaced in the stream of time and is for that reason unreal. The illusion I hold of how something should be is usually an image of what it currently is not. Read that sentence again. The illusion I hold of how something should be is usually an image of what it currently is not. My attachment to it pulls me out of the present moment where I might see realistically. My fixation on my body, 10 pounds thinner, fails to appreciate my body the way it is now. My illusion of how a relationship should be makes me criticize all the places my relationship falls short of that image, and I fail to see the meaning these issues might have for me. Right? And then there's that Anais Nin quote that says, we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. Right? Timely. Ashley said, I feel a bit weird because I can accept that I had to go through all these things, but I can get so trapped in the PTSD still. That diagnosis is still so new. Like I never knew what I experienced was traumatic. So knowing sometimes hurts, even though I generally feel better with more information. Trisha said, well, crap. So Ash, yeah, and it's like, knowing sometimes does hurt because that's part of, when we dissociate, it's like, we're just going to put it over there and, we're not really going to connect with it. And then when we sometimes get handed like a here, okay, by the way, this was traumatic and you should probably feel some type of way about it. And we're over here like, oh, but I don't feel some type of way about it. It's a little bit of a gut punch moment, And just because, and this is the thing too. So, and this is where like spiritual bypassing comes in again, right? So acknowledging that something was what we signed up for, or acknowledging that, something had to happen for us to transcend or to learn our lessons, doesn't take away from the fact that there's still very real human emotions that we have to process through. And that's where stuff like PTSD comes in, because when we don't have the capacity to process it at the time, it's like our filing cabinet, right? We access that filing cabinet. Instead of all the files being in there neat and orderly, it's like somebody just threw them in there. So when our brain goes to access that file, it can't make sense of what happened, and we can't work through it. So we get frozen and we get stuck, right? So, the key is getting in there and getting the stuff in order and releasing the emotional charge around these events. because accepting that something had to happen and everything happens for a reason is great. But again, that doesn't take away the very real human process that we have to go through. We have to process those emotions. Otherwise, we're doing ourselves a disservice. And then we're just up here bypassing the shit out of everything, right? And we see a lot of that. Doesn't take away that it will still be fucking painful, right? It's exactly that. And a lot of people, I see a lot of it where people hide behind that and they use it to just brush aside the painful part of it, because as a collective, we're still very ill-equipped and afraid to deal with our human pain. And that's the best thing we can do, is just dig in and let it be painful and just do it, you know, because we're not going to die. Tiffany said, I have just been overwhelmed with information and progressing it has been slow. And that's a lot of this upper chakra stuff, because all of this download is coming in and you have to integrate it, you know, and definitely take time with it. And Claire, I will admit that I'm still in pain, and it's okay, you know, to be in pain and not be okay. It's okay to, you know, honor that and learn how to be in pain, but be in pain in a healthy way. You know, observe the pain rather than wallow in the pain, if that makes sense. Exactly, Trisha. We process it in the amount of time that we need to safely process it. Ashley said, yes, I relate, Tiffany. A lot of this came up a year ago, but I'm still trying to integrate and organize my filing cabinets. And that's where it comes, as being patient with ourselves, you know, because what do we all want to do? We want to go from like mess, shut down, dissociated PTSD to like, look, I'm up here and I'm a Zen monk. And I do it too. You know, I want to go from here to here with like 5 breaths. Oh, like I did yoga for 5 minutes. Shouldn't I be like fucking floating around on yoga on a lotus flower now? I'm good, right? I acknowledged I was angry. I said it out loud maybe 5 times. I should be over my anger now, right? It doesn't fucking take away that I have this like fucking rage within me, you know? Thousands of years of suppressed emotion I'm carrying within. Yeah, we want it in our time. And that's exactly why so many of us talk ourselves out of it and we quit, because we're like, oh, and then what happens when we stop and we assess where we are? And then there's always somebody that's further ahead of us that we can compare ourselves to. So we're looking over here at, you know, them, and on the outside, it looks like they've got it all together. So we'll be like, oh, well, I should be there. And it's funny because I posted this in the Hug Your Chaos group today about not measuring yourself by someone else's ruler, right? Measure yourselves by your own rulers. So instead of looking at whoever's, you know, 10 years ahead of you, look at where you've come from and acknowledge that progress instead of comparing yourself over there. Claire, yeah, thousands of years, this is what I'm realizing. It's real. It's empowering for me to think that I can be the one to break the chain. And that is the common theme for a lot of us. You know, we are absolutely here to break a lot of these cycles. And yes, inspirational poster moment from Ashley. Comparisons are direct lines to failure. Absolutely. Because we will talk ourselves out of action so quickly when we are comparing ourselves to others, or when we have these ridiculous expectations on ourselves. Oh, I've been this way for 32 years, but now I've been, you know, practicing. I mean, even for me, okay, 4 years. 4 years is nothing compared to the 32 years of programming from this life that came before, or 33 years now, right? 4 years now, because that came before I started doing healing work and getting on this spiritual path. And then let's not forget the all of the trauma from the lifetime and the physical ancestors that I'm carrying before that. So, in 4 years, I think I'm just going to poof, magic wand, you know, no. And that's why we have to be patient with ourselves, and we have to acknowledge that it's going to take time. Or when, like you said, we assume someone we admire got there without a shit ton of work. Exactly. And that's a trick of the ego and the trick of the mind too, because when we're focusing out there and we're looking at that and saying, oh, it must be so easy, that gives us an excuse not to try. Because, oh, it must have been easy for them. Look how hard it is for me. I'll just go ahead and quit. I was going to go stay over here in my comfort zone with my fuzzy blanket and my pacifier, right? That's what we do. We're big babies. Yeah, exactly. We tend to want to see the end result, not the work required. And we expect ourselves to get there like that. And the problem is that there's also people out there who knowingly portray that it's easy and simple and can be done like this because they falsely believe that they've done all of their work, and they are selling that to other people. You know, I see it in quite a few places that I've run into it too. And I saw it in the business coach that Chris and I hired. And I was just like, oh no, you know, I've seen it in several places and with several people. And, you know, I'm watching and observing, and I'm just like, oh, but no, that's not, like, don't do that. That's not cool. And then I have to go back and forth between the thing because my ego wants to jump in because I want to protect everybody, right? I'm the protector, and I want to, like, you know, get everybody to see, and I have to mind myself because that's not my place. Everybody has their own path and they have their own lessons. So I kind of struggle with that sometimes because I'm the one, I just want to burn shit down, right? I want to burn down the system. I want to call everybody out. I want to put them on blast. And then I'm like, I don't know if I want to start that war. Coach the coaches, and the coaches need coaching. But the problem is a lot of them don't want to admit that they need coaching. So, yeah, I start Carol. That really pisses me off, right? But yeah, Trisha, hard lesson learned this year, but grateful for it. Oh, and look, you guys are commenting 1122, 1122, 1122. Ashley, geez, I know a few people like that. Such a trigger for me. And, you know, the further away you guys move from this personal experience, the less of a trigger it will become for you. You know, because now I can pull back on a lot of them and see it from a place of compassion, because I understand it's their own stuff. And I could potentially slip back into that, you know? So, but then again, it's that duality. It's that, like, understanding and being compassionate, but then in 3 breaths, flipping to, no, but I'm angry because it's wrong and you're taking advantage of people. So again, duality, theme of the week, theme of the month, shit, probably theme of the year. So let's touch on, so we have Vishuddha Ajna, Sahasrara, Soul Star, right? Those are our 4 spiritual chakras that we're talking about. And it's really through the working relationship of these chakras that we open the doorway to consciousness, right? We know the throat chakra is our bridge, and this is where we kind of cross that bridge and we come up here and we expand beyond the 4 physical elements that really kind of keep us grounded in the earthly realm. So beyond that, as we cross into the throat and then we expand beyond, we really start to come to the level of consciousness, which is beyond our real intellectual understanding. And the problem is, when the chakras aren't balanced, we see all of the spiritual intellectuals, right? They intellectualize the shit out of all these spiritual teachings. Instead of just applying them and living them, they're intellectualizing them. And I think it's really just part of the process, because we get it intellectually, and then eventually that intellectual understanding of the teaching permeates. If we're doing the work and keeping this pathway open, that permeates, and all of a sudden we have that aha moment of practical application. With some people, they just remain in the intellectual level for a really long time because they're not really willing to do the work, and their ego, it's spiritual ego, and there's the spiritual ego, tells us, oh, no, we're good here, and I'm doing this work, and I got this. So really, it's like consciousness is, you know, it's expansive, it's infinite, and it encompasses everything, right? It's our understanding. So our own personal consciousness is our understanding, our memories, our dreams, our beliefs, our programmings, and it's really the center. I don't know what the center of a computer would be called. Oh, Carol, I'm so sorry, ladies, but I have to go. We're dog and house sitting. I need to get back there before the dogs chew each other's legs off. Glad you were here, Carol. That's right. I'll post the recording, and you can watch the end as soon as I get it up. I'll have it up within the hour when we're done. Much love to you. I'm glad you were able to come live. CPU, right. So it's really, and it organizes all motherboard, right? Okay, so a consciousness is like the motherboard, and it's really where it organizes all of our information that's coming in about what's happening, what we're experiencing, how we feel about it. Um, and it's through the downward flow of energy from the upper chakras, especially the soul star, that brings the consciousness down, 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 the information down, down, down to where we are embodying it, right? And then to the opposite, the upward flow of that information is what allows this stuff from down here to, you know, transcend and release. And we have to bring it up if we're going to integrate it. So my theory that when we're struggling to learn our lessons and we keep having to have the same experience over and over again, it's because the lesson is occurring, but something's preventing it from coming up to here to be fully integrated and then being released onward. Because think about it, once we integrate it, once we learn it, it can go boom, okay, up to the higher realms, done with it. So a lot of times there's probably, you know, some communication is not happening with the lesson fully integrating at the level of the third eye. Oh, and that's what I wanted to read you guys. I'm going to have to find it for you guys, and I will, where she compares it to the memory. I'll find it for you guys, and I'll talk about it in the group this week. That's right, because I'm not going to search right now. I thought I had the page marked, but I marked the wrong page. And it's exactly when we start to connect with this up here, that bigger picture that I'm always talking about, that collective, that deeper understanding that's beyond our intellect. When we start to connect with this at a greater level and we start to understand ourselves as being consciousness embodied, we start to see everybody else's consciousness embodied. So by default, we understand the bigger picture. And by default, we understand that we really are just mirrors of each other, and that anybody at any given moment, no matter what they're doing and how judgmental of it we are, we have the potential to be that very thing if we haven't already been that. And that's a bit of a mind fuck, right? So, because when we can look at someone who we're like, oh, and they're acting the way maybe we acted 10 years ago. And, oh, okay, maybe that's a little easier for us to find compassion for because we've made peace with the idea that we've been that way 10 years ago. But now if we see somebody over there that's doing something horrendous and we don't want to admit that we have that potential, but really that's what it is. Anything that's playing out at any given moment is some form of consciousness embodied in a human form. And that means that the potential, you know, exists, and that doesn't mean we have to be okay with it. So again, duality, right? We don't have to be okay with what's happening. We just have to accept that, you know, the potentiality for darkness and horrible things exists within us to free ourselves from it. And that's where we can pull back, and we don't have to understand it at an intellectual level. We just have to understand and accept it at this higher level. And understanding that is where we see the bigger picture. And guess what happens when we see the bigger picture? By default, we start to trust it because we start to transcend the anxiety and the bullshit and the need to control. Now, that doesn't mean, again, duality, that doesn't mean the anxiety and the need for control is just going to go away, because it's an inherent part of the human mind. So again, there we are. Oh, okay, I got 1 foot in understanding the bigger picture and 1 foot, and I'm still going to fucking try to control it. Right? So that we can laugh at ourselves, because what else can we do at that point but laugh at our ridiculousness, right? Ah, Claire, kisses. Right. The control is something I fight with myself on every day. So what we can start to do is we can start to shift, and we can start to, you know, instead of fighting with ourselves on it, just accept that it's going to be there, and just, well, there goes that control again. And realizing that every time we're disturbed, it's probably some tentacle of our mechanism of wanting to control creeping in and causing internal, and it's usually going to whisper some type of way that it's something else, but just accepting, there I go. There I go. Thank you. Thank you. Because it's real. The fight, I guess, is to keep my hands out of what isn't mine. Right. So starting to explore why you want to control what isn't yours. Ego. Wanting to save people, wanting to prevent them from suffering, whatever it is. Right. It's one of the hardest lessons we have to learn. You know what? And especially as women, we can't save everybody. We can't do it for them. Claire says, my husband tells me that I micromanage the household, and I'm trying to work on that. Yeah. So Claire, exploring, what does the micromanaging do for you? Gives you a sense of control. So, Trisha, look over there and not here. Right. Makes me feel in control, which is just an illusion. So there was that illusion thing I was reading to you guys about. Oh, so one other thing on the illusion is that the illusions are held in place by an investment of psychic energy. When we fixate on an image, control, everything becomes food for its embellishment. If we think someone dislikes us, we take the slightest disharmony as proof. A hypochondriac takes the slightest ache as proof of illness. When we invest in an illusion, control, it takes up our energy and perpetuates the attachment. The more we are attached, of course, the more energy we need to invest. And it is here that we run into the danger of obsession. Since illusion does not feed back the energy we invest, it does not bring satisfaction or completion, and like an addiction, continues to lure us into its false promises. False promises of control. Oh my God. If we can just have control, we'll feel safe. If we can just have control, I'm not going to die. Right? Because everything in the world wants to kill me because I don't feel safe, because I was born into a fucked up household. I fucking inherited mistrust. They couldn't take care of me. They were fucking emotionally unavailable. The world is not safe for me. So, oh my God, I'm now going to live my life as though everything wants to fucking kill me. Subconsciously, of course, because I'm going to act like I'm all together and collected on the outside. But then internally, I'm going to drive myself batshit crazy trying to fucking control everything, because then it won't kill me. I know I would handle control issues all the way. So clearly this resonates. Okay, so Veronica, the book is Eastern Body, Western Mind, Psychology and the Chakra System as a Path to Self. Anodia Judith. Let me see if I can, I think it's I got it on Amazon for like cheap too. And it's like fucking mind blowing. Eastern Body, Western Mind. I'll give you guys the, oh yeah, $15 on Amazon. Oh, not even, $13.59 on Prime. Audiobook, if you have Audible, and it's on Kindle as well. Yeah, here you go. There's a link to it if you guys want it. Powerful shit in here, and it goes deep. She's bringing up like Jungian psychology, and it's a deep book. It's really fucking profound. I keep like marking stuff. I'm like, I need to read this to them. I need to read this to them. I get really, really excited. So you guys will enjoy it. You guys will definitely enjoy it. And I'll come in the group this week, and we'll do. I'm gonna make up for you guys for last week. I owe you guys. I'm going to find that other thing about the memory and her using up all the memory. All right, so we'll go like 5 or 10 more minutes, and we started late anyway, so I don't feel bad for keeping you guys. But if anybody has to go, please do. So, right. Okay. Ajna chakra. So Ajna is probably going to become depleted and cut off from our other chakras if we have developed a pattern of wasting the energy of our lower chakras, AKA giving it away to other people, giving it away to guilt, giving it away to fear, anxiety, giving it away to, drumroll, the illusion of control, right? So if and we say wasting this because these things are not investments. They're not investments of our energy because there is no return. We're just dumping our lower chakra energy. So what'll end up happening when those lower chakras are just dumping their energy into, holes and not investments, then the third eye chakra will become shut down. And that's you guys that are, wide open, too open at the root, not honoring your intuition, being afraid to go up in your upper chakras. So, because a balanced third eye needs stability in the lower chakras to support it, right? Ajna is the regulator. It is the regulator. It's what is going to regulate the flow, the energy, the communication of all the other chakras and the nadis that are feeding the energy through our body, those subtle energy channels. So again, like a balanced ajna is going to encourage balance and stability all throughout our system, right? As above, so below. But of course, we have to dig into the root if we're going to keep that stable balance there. If the root isn't in check, it's just all going to get unbalanced again. And then I gave you guys a little chart to revisit, and we revisited these things. So you guys also have the class where we talked about interrelations at the end of our beginner course. We did the interrelations class. And then to quickly come back to them. So, Ajna and Vishuddha is really that relationship between, do we allow ourselves to speak or do we overanalyze the shit out of everything we're going to say and then not speak at all? Or do we not think before speaking and just spit out whatever, comes to mind? And then we're like, oh shit, why did I say that? And now we made a mess. When we can balance between weighing out our words, like, does this need to be said and does it need to be said right now? And does it need to be said by me? Kind of can keep us in check, and it can check us, as if we're coming from a place of ego, right? Third eye, and then healthy communication here. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if there's a blockage here, the third eye, the ajna, is definitely going to respond to that and either be crazy and chaotic or, dulled down and shut down. Trisha, took you years to develop a filter between thoughts and words flying out of my mouth. Yeah. Right. Tiffany, as the Pleiadians say, we have a 24-hour distraction, so we don't actually think, right? Pleiadians are so smart motherfuckers. So then third eye and Sahasrara, Ajna and Sahasrara, is where we really start to integrate at the level of the mental capacity and the insight and the intuition of the third eye, is where we start to be able to translate and comprehend what's going on at the level of the Sahasrara, because it's really where we start to just open the doorway. So it's like we're at the third eye, and through the crown we can peer into the expansive beyond, the multidimensional nature actually of reality. And it's when we allow ourselves to look at that bigger picture and trust it and transcend our anxiety and our need to control, that the relationship between third eye and crown starts to really grow and flourish. And then Ajna and Soul Star is kind of newer for us because we just learned about the Soul Star. So it's through the relationship and the communication of Ajna and Soul Star that we integrate really that higher purpose. Because if our true higher purpose comes from the Soul Star, then integrates through the crown, it's in the level of the ajna that we start to be able to have the insight and the intuition and the understanding of what it is. Oh, I see. Oh, okay. I start to see. And it gives it to us in a way that our mind in this reality can start to comprehend it. And that allows us to start taking action to fulfill that path, right? Why is that so scary for me, Trisha? Probably because you don't trust, I think that it's scary for you. And I'm wondering if were you highly sensitive as a child, or, very shut down as a child when you were highly sensitive or overly perceptive, or told like, no, that's not real. No, you're wrong. Logic, logic, logic. And a lot of this is then perpetuated when we go to school, and school tells us, no, that's wrong. You have to think like this, think logically. And we're told to then, doubt ourselves. So it's like, for instance, as a child, if we walk into a room and we're like, oh, I feel like I'm picking up on your emotions, they're going to be like, okay, no, that's not real. Go away. Don't talk about that. They're going to, I hear this. Oh, my guides are talking to me. We're going to get checked into a fucking mental hospital, right? It's 70s, 80s, and 90s. Like, you weren't able to say that stuff. They would have freaking, so I'm wondering, did maybe explore, well, maybe not yet, Trisha, because month 2 in Abundant Life Mastery, we're going to go through this. But I think that that'll be something that'll come up for you, is that there's probably a block there, that something occurred to you where you were shut down, and you said, and this comes up for me when I think about you too, Ash, somebody just massively, put like a sledgehammer or a wall down and told you that that's not real. So you then shut that down and were like, okay, I'm not even going to go there anymore. So that's my guess why that's so scary and why you guys are so comfortable in that route. Exactly. Yeah. So when we come to then the crown chakra, Sahasrara, right? The 7, we know, the highest of the 7 in the physical body. It's the doorway. And when we talk about the downward relationship between Sahasrara and Vishuddha, that's exactly where that crazy fanatical and dogmatic thinking comes from that we see in so many people. So like shut down crown, shut down throat, or like excessive crown energy, like the energy just isn't moving and it's not able to integrate. Like, nope, here's what they mean. Oh my God, this is what they say. It's literal. It's this. And that's the way it is. When these are healthy, the throat and the crown chakra connection and communication is healthy, what we start to understand the symbolic and higher nature of spiritual teachings, right? Rather than literal, right? Bible isn't literal, symbolic and figurative, right? Right. And then when we talk about Sahasrara and Soul Star, they really work together. The way that like the root and the earth star, like the earth star is like the basement of the root chakra and really anchors the light body to the ground. It's like Soul Star is really the attic of, the crown chakra, and it's up there, and it's our higher self, and it's that anchor point for sort of our highest potential in this reality. And it's where we really transcend the separation and the ego and the need and the illusion for control. And it's really where together the Sahasrara and the Soul Star help us navigate the duality of what it is to be a physical being in a spiritual world and a spiritual being in a physical world, because that's exactly what we're doing here. We're living this crazy existence in this dualistic world called Earth. We're spiritual beings in physical bodies, but we're also physical human beings that have a spiritual drive. Why isn't the higher self louder? Because it's like the parent. She's sitting back there like, okay, I'm going to let you learn your lessons. And because think about it, if she yelled at us through all of our lessons, we wouldn't ever fall on our faces. And sometimes we have to fall on our faces, right? So my face is getting really sore. That's why you're going to start working with your upper chakras, and you're going to start integrating these lessons, because my guess is your fear of going into the upper chakras, or not your fear, but that block that's in there has been, preventing you from allowing it to really integrate so that you can be free of them. So before we finish up, do you guys have any questions on anything else? Or anything else you want me to go back over? So this is why I can't know yet what my purpose is. Yeah. And it's all going to happen in divine perfect timing. because that's exactly where your purpose is coming from, up here. So, you know, I'll be interesting to hear what comes out when you do the soul star meditation. And make that connection. You love the meditation. Good. I was happy to hear that. I really enjoyed making it. So I'll be looking forward to this week hearing how you guys go with both. So if nobody, does anybody have any other questions or comments? I'm unmuting you guys. My nose is getting really stuffy. I need to go drink more decongestant tea. I think I unmuted. Oh, Veronica, I did not mute you. All right. There we go. So yeah, if you guys have nothing else, always thank you. Thank you for spending time with me. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work. And I hope you have all an awesome, awesome day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. Much love.
Have a beautiful Sunday.
You too. Bye-bye.
Blessings and love.
Bye, guys.
Bye.